In July 1934, Washington Battiste was chopped to death in downtown Kingston. Battiste was a well-known cyclist and won a number of road races throughout Jamaica. In 1927, he went to Panama with other Jamaican cyclists. There, he won 6 out of 7 races. At first, he was an elementary school teacher in Enfield, St. Mary, but moved later to Kingston and became a driver for a public bus company. The problem started when Mr. Battiste, known as Teacher, had rented a room from Philip Geylord. Teacher moved out without paying back rent. Since Teacher refused to pay, Mr. Geylord sued him for the amount. One day, the two men buck up in downtown Kingston shortly before the fatal incident. They got into a cussing match as Teacher was upset that Mr. Geylord sued him. Teacher threw a brick and it hit Mr. Geylord in his head. The police was called to take a statement, but Mr. Geylord told the police not to bother as he would handle the matter. On the day of the incident, around 8 o'clock that morning, Teacher came out of his Princess Street house and began walking down Luke Lane. He didn't notice that Mr. Geylord was following him. Just as Teacher was approaching Hayward Street, Mr. Geylord gave no warning or made any sound. He suddenly took out a machete from the side of his clothes, held it up, and struck Teacher in the back of his neck, almost severing his head from the body as Teacher fell to the ground. But the one chop wasn't sufficient for Mr. Geylord, who continued to chop the unresponsive man. Of course, people on the busy street that Monday morning could not believe what they witnessed. Some later said in court that it happened so quickly they couldn't react. Mr. Geylord threw the cutlass down and walked away as if nothing had happened. As he walked to West Queen Street, he was stopped by a constable who made him return back to the scene of the crime, where he was later arrested. Teacher's body was taken to the morgue, where the medical examiner performed an autopsy for the records. The body was later released that day to the family members and transported to the Princess Street family home. For hours, it was unimaginable, the massive crowd of people who gathered on Princess Street in front of the house, blocking traffic. Many even climbed on top of roofs and trees. Everyone wanted to get a glimpse of the deceased body. A man had to stand in front of the gate to stop the inquisitive people from fighting to get inside the family house on Princess Street. Teacher had a big funeral 3 days later. In September of that same year, Mr. Geylord was sentenced to death for the murder of Teacher. After appeals were denied, Mr. Geylord was executed in October, 3 months after the murder of Teacher. Reports indicated that Mr. Geylord's usual reading of scriptures and singing hymns seemed to have given him the strength to walk calmly and bravely to the gallows at the St. Catherine District Prison in his requested suit, white shirt, and bow tie. He had accepted his fate, that he would be justly punished by God for the crime, and he was not afraid to go to meet his Maker.